Good morning, students. Today we shall begin with a new chapter, chapter number 10, Disaster Management from Science and Technology, Part 2. Let's begin. Introduction. Children, look at this video clip. This video clip is of a sudden dreadful event that took place in an area. This event caused complete chaos. Due to immediate action taken by locals, no life was lost. So children, a sudden event that can cause large-scale damage to life, property, and social aspects of a society and nation is called a disaster. Now, let us find out what is actually meant by disaster and how disaster is defined globally. Come, let us now study what is disaster. Disaster. Variously dangerous events occur many times in the environment. Those are called as disasters. Some of the main natural disasters are floods, famine, cyclone, earthquake, volcanoes, etc. These are all of a sudden troubles to the mankind. Such events cause sudden changes in the environment and thereby cause the damage to it. Environment is also damaged due to use of natural resources for our development. This leads to sudden disasters unexpected to human. These can be called man-made disasters. United Nations has defined the disaster as the sudden change or event that leads to huge loss of life and property. Words like huge and sudden are important in the definition. As the disaster occurs suddenly, it cannot be predicted. Hence, precautions are not possible. Huge losses to the property occur in the area of disaster. There are long-term effects on society due to incidences of life and property loss. Various areas of life like economic, social, cultural, political, law and administration, etc. are affected by it. The life in the area of disaster disturbs totally. There is loss to life and property of the people in distress. Earlier, we have studied various types of disasters and the measures to be taken. None of the different disasters are similar. Period of each disaster is not same. Some disasters are short term whereas some are long term. Reason behind each disaster are also different. Depending upon the nature of disaster, it can be determined that which component of the environment will be affected more. Children, come, let us now study different types of disasters. Types of disasters. Children, we have already studied that disaster can broadly be classified into two main types, namely natural disasters and man-made disaster. However, we can classify the disasters in other two ways too, like catastrophic disasters. For example, cyclones in Odisha, catastrophic earthquakes of Gujarat and Latur, frequently buzzing cyclones in Andhra Pradesh, etc., which lead to total chaos, huge of loss of life and property in respective regions. However, irrespective of all these, life has always returned to normal within short time. Disasters making the impact for long duration are those whose after effect are either severe or severity increases with the time. For example, famine, various problems of crops, strikes of workers, rising levels of ocean, desertification, etc. Disasters making the impact for longer duration. Understood? Disasters can also be classified into three more types depending upon whether the disaster that has occurred is due to or related to geophysical factors, biological factors, and man made disasters. Geophysical disaster, biological disaster, and man made disasters are the three types of disaster. Further, geophysical disaster is divided into geological and atmospheric. Geological disasters are further divided into earthquake, volcano, tsunami, landslide, landfall, soil erosion, alkalization, floods, etc. These are the types of geological disasters. Next, atmospheric disasters, we have hot waves, cold waves, snowstorm, snowfall, cyclone, hailstorm, droughts, floods, meteorites, sunspot, etc. are the examples of atmospheric disasters. The next type, biological disaster, is divided into 2. Disaster related to plants and disaster related to animals. Now let's see, disasters related to plants are forest fire, fungal infection, growth of weeds as examples of disasters related to plants. Next type is cholera, malaria, hepatitis and plague. These are the diseases which are caused by the bacteria or insects, poisonous insects and animal bites, right? So these are the disasters related to animals. Understood, children? The third one, man-made disasters. Here we have two types. Here examples like war, bomb blast, forced migration, terrorism, rape, child labor are man-made disasters at international level. And some of the disasters like leakage of poisonous gases, atomic test, accidents are unplanned actions and which are unknown man-made disasters. Now children, have a look to these two scenes. The first scene is of the disaster struck, before the disaster has struck, and the second scene is of after the disaster. What a terrible sight to watch. Come, let us study about to which extent occurrence of disaster can affect us and the environment. So children, let us learn about effect of disasters. Now here images of some disasters are shown. Come, to start with this topic of effect of disasters, let us quickly recall about the effects of these disasters that you have studied in your earlier classes. The first image is of flood. Occurrence of flood causes huge loss of life and property. Soil erosion, destruction of standing crops, collapsing of bridges, flooding of coastal villages, shortage of food are the problems related to floods. After effects of flood, spread of diseases and also epidemics are the effects of flood, of this disaster. The second image is of famine. Famine causes severe scarcity of food grains and water. Huge loss of life is recorded due to famine. The third image is of an earthquake. It causes destruction of infrastructure, change in the direction of the flow of river, huge loss of life and property. The fourth picture. Look at the fourth image, children. This image is of forest fire. A forest fire is an uncontrolled fire in a forest, pastures or grassland due to natural or man-made causes. Natural wealth and biodiversity are greatly damaged due to forest fire. It also contributes to a lot of air pollution in the environment. Thus, from this, we can say that every disaster brings destruction along with it and has serious effects on man and environment. Collapsing of bridges, flooding of coastal villages, shortage of food are some problems of floods. Disasters definitely affect the economy of the nation. That effect is always related to disaster and economy. For example, if any port is destroyed, there are long lasting effects on economic due to huge expenses on its construction. An effect of disaster on social leadership is that if local leadership is not strong enough, citizens become confused. It affects their participation in rescue and rehabilitation activities. Administrative problems arise during the disaster. If local governing bodies are affected by disasters, related departments cannot answer the problems of disaster efficiently. All the concerned departments are affected by disaster and thereby entire system collapses. So are you getting me, children? Now children, can you see this concept map where different effects of disasters are mentioned and two blocks are empty? Please read it carefully, children. Environmental effects. We have administrative professionals. Then we have medical. And can you fill the blank spaces and complete the chart? Let's see. Social. Occurrence of any social disaster brings incredibly stressful, disruptive and traumatic time for affected. Whole communities can be uprooted. Friends and family divide. Homes and livelihoods can be lost. Trauma and grief puts the person, family and community relationships under pressure. Increase in alcohol and drug abuse, domestic violence, etc., are also reasons for social disasters. It can really affect the social disaster. Now, next is political disaster. Political disaster arises when the government is irresponsible. Ideally, government should be aware of natural disasters, risk, and set policies and regulatory measures in place to deal with them. When government fails, local people suffer. Government may be voted out for this reason, and there is a political unrest. Now children, railway accident happens every now and then in our country. Can you tell what are the various effects of such accident? So the effects are huge economic loss, stress on the railway workers, temporary collapse of transport system, significant environmental contamination of the affected area is also witnessed. Death and injuries due to the mishap increases. Trauma and emotional stress is required for the person suffering. Due to this, well-being of the society is also disturbed miserably. After the study of effects of disasters, one thing is clear, that disasters are bound to happen and cause serious effects on every aspect of the working of nation. To reduce the effect of disaster, we need to think on the aspects like what is the exact nature of this disaster, whether there are any changes in nature before the occurrence of disaster, how long the effects occur after occurrence of the disaster. This will help us to understand the nature and gravity of disaster and thus will enable us to work accordingly to reduce its effect. Come, let us proceed further to study about the nature and scope of disaster in the next part of this chapter.